I've had people be like, "We'll play." I remember playing shows. They're like, "What kind of guitar do you have?" I'm like, I don't know. Like, I really don't know. I got it from a friend of a friend who got it out of a dumpster. Like, I don't know.
Welcome to another episode of Holy Fuck, It's a Music Podcast. Our guest today is Mark Heise, who is best known as the co-founder and president of Rebellion Brewing, a community leader in the Regina warehouse district, and a Regina fashion icon. Mark is also a longtime musician, music lover, and a vinyl aficionado, and has fronted bands such as the Radfords and the Heavenly Bodies, which is his current side project. I think it's true and safe to call him a modern-day Renaissance man. Hello, Mark.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing good. Doing fantastic.
Good.
Yeah, the beard's looking a little bit grey there. Is that coronavirus? Is that what's done that to you, or?
Yeah, I'm usually the only brewer that doesn't have a beard. But when this whole thing hit in mid-March, there wasn't really time for any grooming for about a week or so, and I just thought, okay, fine, I'm just going to keep the beard until this is over with.
Mark, this is the first time we've met, so just I'm going to ask you, where did you grow up? Where were you born and raised, and that kind of thing?
Right in Regina. Born and raised 1977, and the only time I moved away was in Calgary. We moved there in 2001 for about 6 months, and realized that Regina is better than Calgary, so came back home.
Nice. So. What were your early musical influences like? Like, did you have a musical household? Did your mom or dad play, or brothers or sisters, or?
Yeah, I kind of have. My family always enjoyed music. They don't really have musical bone in their body, and I'm not sure I do either. But yeah, definitely on the enjoyed side. I have very vivid memories of being about 3 years old and enjoying the Stray Cats Strut. I really was into Waylon Jennings, and I was into Kenny Rogers back then too. Again, that was pretty popular stuff, especially in Saskatchewan country music. But and Charlie Daniels too. And I know some folks view the country music as kind of redneck, backwoodsy, this or that. But those are very, very good country artists of ones to be. So I'm pretty proud that as 3 years old, I had pretty good taste in music already.
I'm kind of the opinion, I don't know whether you share it or not. I just kind of think that good music is good music. There's good music in all genres. There's bad music in all genres. So Kevin was actually telling me that you're into the Kinks too, big time Kinks.
Oh yeah, I love the Kinks. I really that whole kind of obsession with the Kinks. Okay, I'll tell you. So I was really into punk rock in the 90s. And started getting what you'd call more like garage punk. And there was a record label called Crypt Records, which is still around to this day. The guy's name's Tim Warren. And he's this great guy to bounce idea. He's just got a fantastic knowledge of cool, obscure music. And if you bought a record on Crypt Records, it had recommended albums you should listen to. And it said the first 2 Kinks albums is something you got to get into. And so I listened to that, and they're pretty raw and gritty. You get why the garage punk guys like that stuff, but then you get into more of the kind of the weirdo stuff to us in North America. No one was really into that here at any point in time, but it's pretty cool now that even my some of my younger staff at work, I'll come in and and they're playing those kind of cool later 60s albums by them, and whether it's or Village Green and that sort of stuff, and it's pretty cool to walk into the brewery and hear that playing while they're packaging beers. So yeah.
We were having a conversation about the Kinks online at one point, and you'd said that you'd told your staff that Waterloo Sunset was sort of one of the best songs, one of your favorite songs of all time, which was kind of that seems at odds. Most people would maybe think that that's at odds with the punk thing. Like, how does that marry up, do you think, in your mind?
I think, you know, you eventually, I mean, I love everything to do with punk rock. I listen to it every day still. But yeah, you kind of, you know, you kind of blow your brains out on that. There's only so many ways to play three chords and yell and scream. And so then you start looking for just different things. And yeah, I was really attracted to that whole the 60s garage psychedelic music, and then all the crazy stuff that was going on in the UK, which was where you got some of the really, really unique, interesting stuff, like those Kinks albums and some of the other stuff, Arthur Lee and all this just crazy stuff. And so yeah, you're just looking for different sounds. Again, you're not always intentionally looking for just the point to be obscure that no one else knows about. Just, I don't know, you hear the typical stuff all the time, and it just scratches that itch to like find that really cool obscure thing that you've just never heard it before, right? And so yeah, to hear something like Waterloo Sunset, that's pretty out there, really. Yeah. And it's a beautiful song, and I'm not really into listening to songs over and over. And I think one night last year, I don't know, I probably listened to it like 6 times in a row, which is I just don't do that. But it was so good.
What about the Clash? Did you get into the Clash? Because I always thought they were, you know, they definitely did some punk stuff in the early days, and then they kind of gravitated and did other kind of things, like, you know, like the Wrong and Boyo or a song like that where they got a horn section. And were you into the Clash at all?
Yeah, it took me a while though to get into some of the more odd stuff. You know, again, I think the Clash is really, it's a kind of a tough one, especially if you're from Saskatchewan, to wrap your head around what the heck they're even doing. Yeah, the first album wasn't even released in North America. They said Joe Strummer's accent was so bad that no one here would understand what the words were, you know, let alone the references to London, and very specific anyway. So they didn't even release it here at first, because they just thought, what's the point? But yeah, again, I eventually came around to it, to more than just the punk rock albums, the first couple. But yeah, stuff like London Calling and all that sort of stuff, it's just amazing, and it's timeless music. And I probably appreciate it more now than ever, because it reflects. It's almost like to me. I compare it to oh, now this is where I'm blanking out. But sorry, it's just like almost like a history of music for you in a double album. It's, you know, here's a ska song, here's a rockabilly song, you know, here's a disco song, and they're so well done. Yeah. So yeah, I just eat that stuff up, and it's really, really cool. Yeah, just so much variety, and just so well done. You know, bands that can rise above that. The Rolling Stones are another one that just blows my mind. Obviously, they've been around just the years that they've been around, but even just how they evolved from the 60s into the mid 70s, and you know, they basically mastered every style that they tried to do, whether they were just covering Motown songs or doing their kind of weird pop experiments around 67 and all that kind of stuff, or, you know, they're called, you know, the world's greatest rock and roll band, but you listen to their classic albums and they're like nailing country music and the blues. Yeah. I'm like, yeah. It dawned on me a few years ago. I'm like, this isn't even rock and roll. This is literally a country album and a blues album, rural blues album. So that's pretty cool stuff, I think. I don't know.
One thing I was thinking about the other day that has somewhat fallen by the wayside. Remember the 70s and 80s? Every band had at least like 1 or 2 live albums. And it was always a double, so it was always a gatefold. You know, there'd be a concert shot in the middle. And I think maybe now it's because of YouTube, where all the live stuff goes online, it's video, but I don't think you get live albums anymore, which is weird, because I had tons of great live albums growing up, you know?
Yeah, I don't get as, I think, again, that's where I say, you know, some of the, I don't think the right word is that the innocence is lost, but there was that kind of magic, that specialty. I was even thinking about pre-MTV and music videos, and you didn't get to actually see, you didn't even necessarily see the artists other than buying the album or necessarily get to see them live, but you could buy a live album. There was no other choice. Yeah. And, you know, now you've got artists, you know, performing live in their bedroom or living room, right? I mean, I watched a live 2-hour concert last night of a guy, Whitey Morgan, that I just think is awesome. Yeah. I mean, I've been lucky to see him twice. But yeah, I guess I got to see him for the third time on Facebook Live last night, and it was actually really cool. You know, I felt really fortunate I got to watch that, but it's not the same as when you bought those live albums and you would just, again, you didn't have, it was special because you didn't have 100 live albums to choose from. You had that one, and you had to fill in the blanks in your mind and in your imagination as to what was going on or what they maybe even looked like, because it wasn't always exactly clear.
There used to be mystery, right? Back then, there was mystery in who they were and what they looked like, and and now there's none of that. And now you got to be super out there and accessible, and so
yeah, which again is cool because you can get really close to, if you want to call them your heroes or whatever, right? But it's both super cool. Again, I try, I like Kiss. I have Kiss on my arm and tattoos and stuff. And yeah, that's some of my other friends who we kind of come at it from the same perspective as to why we like Kiss. It's exactly like you said. There was that magic, and if you were a kid in the '70s, you kind of weren't sure if this was real or if they really were superheroes. And there's no way anyone would ever fall for that now. Like, be like, yeah, no. I saw the guy at Starbucks, and here's the video of it. No. That was pretty cool. It was pretty cool because it was that whole you suspend belief for a while, and just let your imagination run wild. And yeah, that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I would have sucked, if someone had cell phone footage of Jerry Lee Lewis buying grapefruit or something at Walmart. It would have sucked. That would have just blown the whole thing wide open, right? So
exactly, yeah.
This wouldn't work. So, growing up with all those bands and sort of all those things going into your ears and bringing on all this music and obviously having, that love of it, when did you actually start playing? Like, when did you pick up a guitar and think, well, I'm gonna give this a go?
Again, for me, it was kind of that mystique and build up that musicians were just some special breed, some special species that I didn't have any access to or any awareness. They were magical, mythical people. But so I didn't. I guess I was a late bloomer, to make a long story short. But I bought my first guitar in I think 1995. Pawn shop, terrible Stratocaster guitar, and that just came about from. Again, as I just said, I thought music to me just seemed like this mystical thing that I couldn't really reach out and touch. And it sounds, you know what? I'll defend. I will defend the good parts of them. I'm not super big on them on what they've done for the last 20 years of their career, but Green Day is what really did it for me. And because they were, they went out of their way to make it seem like they didn't really care, and they were just kids at the time and just doing their thing. And so that suddenly was like, oh, you actually can do this on your own. You don't need any other special gifts or talents. Again, there's a lot more. Once you actually get into it, you find out a whole lot, as we mentioned about beer. Anyone can make beer, anyone can homebrew. And when I was running a homebrew club, we told everyone that, and this was, that was the marketing. Anyone can do it. And anyone can do it, but to do it well takes a little bit more. But that was the whole idea. That's what finally made it real, was actually Green Day. I remember I was aware of punk rock and the Sex Pistols and the Ramones, but they just seemed like cartoon characters and just some weird thing. Again, it wasn't something that I could relate to and thought, hey, I didn't see myself in them. And even the grunge scene with Nirvana, again, it just seemed like Seattle was from another world, and these depressed guys in their flannels, that just was I didn't get it. I mean, I enjoyed the music, but I didn't relate to it as I could see myself doing that. So that's when I bought a guitar, and I don't know. I think everyone kind of has their coming of age, whether it's younger or older or whenever, and I think at that point I finally felt comfortable enough to think, well, I got something to say, and whether it's stupid or whatever, I'm just gonna do it and see what happens, And you gotta eventually have some confidence, or just whether it's arrogance or whatever. But that's when I basically just finally started and taught myself. again, I had no one to teach me anything. I remember I had signed up for internet service in that same fall of 1995. I got a guitar and I got an internet connection, and eventually figured out how to play power chords. Like I say, and I am not. I'm a terrible musician, but I think I'm pretty proud of myself. I was about 17 years old, and I had no idea about music theory, no idea about anything, and thanks to the internet and a pawn shop guitar, I did the first few songs I did learn were Nirvana and Ramones songs because they were the most basic, simple songs with like 2 chords that I could figure out. I always wanted to play the Green Day songs, and Green Day songs are dead simple, but at the time they were way too complicated for me. So
and too fast.
yeah, exactly.
So when did you, strumming around on your own is great, and we all start out that way, and you build your confidence, think, yeah, okay, well, this is going okay. When did you actually start playing with other people? Like, when was the first time you remember sort of sitting down to actually jam with someone?
Probably like about 6 months later, like early '96, started doing that. And again, like me personally, I'm very introverted, very logical thinking, very math oriented. I don't want to just play around on a guitar for the sake of playing around on a guitar. And frankly, when other people do that, it grates on my nerves. And I'm like, why are you doing that? That's annoying. And so that's where I don't feel I'm an artist because I don't think that way. So if I'm going to pick up a guitar, it's to learn a song, and I'm learning a song or I'm writing a song because we're going to put out an album or because we're going to put on a show. Otherwise, there's no reason to pick up a guitar. There's no reason to get together and just have a jam. So it's always like business. We have a set list of the songs we're going to learn. And so, so I went to the pawn shop, got a guitar, taught myself chords, and it's like, hey, well, now I need a band. So I talked to these other guys. I'm like, yeah, we're forming a band. This is what we're going to do. They're like, oh, okay. And they like showed up, and I'm like, here's the songs, here's the chords, and this is what we're going to do. And it was very, very regimented, and it was terrible. But yeah, we were those guys. I'm still friends with all those guys, and yeah, they're like that was the best band we were ever in. We were actually organized and had purpose. And
but terrible together. Right? I mean, that's Dave Grohl always says that. If you want to start a band, just start a band. Get a bunch of guys together in someone's garage, suck, but just enjoy it. Just go play music and just try it. Because you'll never know if you don't do it.
I really enjoy that communal bond of coming together, and like I say, as bad as we are, when whether it's a practice or an actual show, and you just there's that feeling of when you're locked in, and it feels pretty good, Yeah, you feel like you're the greatest band in the world at that point in time.
And it's a good feeling. So I played Regina a little bit in the '90s. I think it was called The Moon.
Yeah,
it was one place. That was '90s, and then I played McNally's or whatever it's called now, a whole schwack of times into the 2000s and whatnot. So, but when you first started your band together, where did you guys play in Regina? Was there a good local scene for what you were playing?
Yeah, so we were trying to play. We were always trying to play punk rock, and we would call it pop punk, kind of Ramones based. The bands we really liked were like the bands called Screeching Weasel or the Queers, and I mean they kind of came out of that whole Green Day thing and whatnot. But that stuff was quite popular in North America at the time. But again, in Saskatchewan, it wasn't cool at all. Saskatchewan very much. I mean, at that point, they were still into metal and like kind of the whole skateboarding California punk rock scene. And so yeah, we didn't really fit in. They didn't like us, and we weren't that good either. But we didn't care. But no, in terms of venues, we would play at the State and which turned into the District a lot. We played at the Moon in 2000. We had a short-lived band with a lot of the same members. So our band was originally the Radfords. And then for a little bit, we kind of put the Radfords on hiatus for like 6 months. And then we were called the Men of Wealth and Taste, which I thought was the smartest band name ever. And we played at the Moon with Into Eternity, which I don't know if you guys know Into Eternity, but insane kind of death metal operatic vocals types thing. And so it was, that was an interesting show at the Moon. There's another place we played. We played this other, just it wasn't it was actually awesome, but it was called Riley's. And yeah, there's a lot of like just local drunks, lots of old people beating each other up. It was really weird because we're like 20 years old, and yeah, we thought, oh, they wouldn't, because at most places they're worried about renting it out to punk rock kids because the punk rock kids are going to destroy the place, but they didn't care about us. They thought we were great because we didn't beat each other up and destroy.
What about that hotel that was downtown there? That's since been knocked down.
The Plains?
What the hell?
Yeah.
The Plains. Did you ever play the Plains?
Yeah, we played at the Plains a couple of times. That was cool. Hung out at the Plains a lot. Again, just love the vibe there. They had awful karaoke, and they had a lot of they'd have cover bands on the weekends, and like, I mean, the cover bands, I mean, at the time they were pretty cheesy in my mind, but they were good. They were professional musicians, and I've since realized, they'd also get, back, that was over 20 years ago, and it wasn't unheard of for them to make $2,000-$3,000 for a weekend doing that, which was a heck of a lot more than the $50 bar tab we were getting. So I may have looked down my nose a bit at them at the time, but they were at least making some money off of it. So, yeah. But yeah, the Plains was awesome. The crowd was cool there, and yeah, the karaoke, we had a lot of fun with karaoke there. Our drummer, he loved doing karaoke there. He always did AC/DC Whole Lot of Rosie. That was his song, and he'd get up on the tables and be singing to the women there and stuff. And he was about 5'8" and about 350 pounds, and it was pretty cool. Strutting around on the top of the tables and whatnot doing this thing.
I stayed at the Plains more than once. When you played the Moon, they would put you up at the Plains, and
right,
because it was had to have been the cheapest room in town. it was quite the experience,
Yeah, people don't. Again, I think that's another really kind of cool thing is people don't understand that. Again, like I was no musician of much acclaim, but like we toured out to Vancouver a couple times. We played all across Saskatchewan and all sorts of dumps, and I was working in IT. I was a professional guy. I wore a suit and tie to work and this and that. And I used all of my vacation to drive around in a $500 van and sleep on people's floors. Like we actually never ever got a hotel room the entire time I played in the band. And
really,
and like like that we were terrible. And like there's no money for hotel rooms. I slept on the floor. I slept on like a. I think we were in Kamloops, and I slept on the concrete in a church parking lot one night because there was this.
Oh God!
It was too hot to sleep in the van, and so I just slept on the pavement. But yeah, I mean, and that's pretty cool. I wouldn't want to do that now, but I mean, to do that at 20, 21 years old, again, I feel really fortunate that you got to do those things, and I don't, not that I certainly wasn't, I'm not like trying to romanticize being poor or this or that, but people can't relate to that. And, again, there wasn't, you couldn't get out your cell phone and find the club in Vancouver. You just had to drive around and ask people where the heck you're going to find the place playing, right? And that's pretty cool stuff. Again, it was a special time, right? And so nowadays it's easy to get to where you're getting to.
It's definitely a lot of fun when you're young like that, touring all over the place, and it's kind of an adventure. So, yeah. So you guys went all the way out to Vancouver. Did you guys go to Toronto, Montreal that way at all, or?
We never ever got east, which was crazy. The furthest east we got was Yorkton, and that was the very first show we ever played. So we had the story, which I do try to tell some folks, is we had booked a 3-day tour to Manitoba in July of 1999, and so I think we were going to play Yorkton and Brandon and Winnipeg, and then the Yorkton show got canceled and the Brandon show got canceled. We were booked to play at the Zoo in Winnipeg, and we really wanted to play in Winnipeg, but again, I was the accountant of the band because I was working as an accountant. I'm like, well, we're going to lose money, so we can't go. So we canceled our 3-day tour to Winnipeg, and so instead we went to a show at the State here in Regina, and it was Nashville Pussy. and I met met who ended up being my wife. So that's kind of a cool story. So I never ever got to tour east of Saskatchewan, but I ended up meeting my wife as a result. So that's okay.
Play the zoo, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, and it was I gotta say, it was really an experience. It really truly was.
I know. I mean, I kind of feel bad that we didn't get to go, but I don't know. I've got a pretty good, going on 21-year relationship, so I guess I'll take that instead.
Yeah, it's a good backup. So what is it? Is it a bit of a dive bar, Randy? It's pretty rough, or is it? What's the deal with it?
Yeah. Like the first time I went there, there was a hole in the stage that they just kind of put a little chunk of carpet over so that I guess you'd fall in a carpeted hole instead of a hole. And another time we were playing there, they had an S&M convention in the basement. So all night, all these people were walking in with women with men on leashes and just stuff like that. Winnipeg was fucking crazy, man. It was a strange and wonderful place.
Yeah, I want to spend more time in Winnipeg. I got to go there for a conference a couple of years ago, and I have really good friends there. I make fun of all the breweries there all the time, but I love I make fun of them because I really like them, and I think Winnipeg's an awesome city. As backwards as Saskatchewan is, I wouldn't say Winnipeg is necessarily backwards. I tell them that they're backwards, but they're if you look at them geographically, they're really they're extremely isolated from the rest of the world, and that gives it makes them very unique. Is what it does. And so, yeah, people make fun of Winnipeg. I'm excited to go to Winnipeg. I was supposed to go in March, actually, when all this stuff went down. I was supposed to go, and we worked out a collaboration brew, and me and my wife had vacation booked, and instead we spent our vacation trying to save our business, which we did, and then that's all great, and that's a whole other story. But yeah, Winnipeg is there's a lot of really cool culture, music, food, people say it's a dirty city. Yeah, okay, maybe it's a little dirty, but look up. The architecture is phenomenal. It's super, super cool. They have a ton of old buildings, which again, some people say, oh, that's dirty and run down. I'll take that over the. I spend tons of time in Calgary. And I don't hate Calgary, but it's very plasticky. Everything's shiny and new, and there's no soul. Winnipeg's got soul.
Yeah, well, and Winnipeg has put out a lot of amazing musicians and bands too. And I think you're right. It's got lots to do with them being so isolated and their own little island in Canada. They're a long ways away from anybody to play anywhere. They've got to go a fucking long way, right?
Yeah. Again, it's hard for I lose that until you actually sat and think about it. The closest city is Regina, and so
it's 8
what?
hours. Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
That's the closest city to Winnipeg is Regina.
Yeah, it's there's Brandon, but Brandon doesn't count. Yeah.
No, Brandon does not count. So hey, your current band is called Heavenly Bodies, is that right? Is it the same type of music, or what's changed since the old days? A different group of guys and everything?
So it's me and my friend Lowell. Lowell plays bass. Lowell's been in every band I've ever been in. And me and Lowell we were born in the same hospital 2 days apart from each other. So we basically been together since birth. And I think actually cool. I was going through a box of stuff last weekend. I think everyone's bored right now and going through old stuff, but I found a figure skating photo of us when we were 3 years old or something, or in daycare or play school. Anyways, we've been friends forever. So Lowell's always in every band with me, and then a couple other guys. Actually, a guy he works at Rebellion. He's our drummer, and then Dustin from Street Culture does some really cool stuff. But Dustin is our lead guitar player, and also funny because I know Dustin. I've known him for quite a few years now, but I didn't really know him. And it was funny because I was going through some old pictures. I had pictures of some shows from 2004, 2005, and I was like, "Oh, there's my buddy. There's Dustin. He's in my band now." And so apparently I'd seen him play back then, but I didn't even know who he was. So that's always kind of fun. But no, Heavenly Bodies. It's always based in punk rock because I'm just not talented enough, and that's just kind of what I go back to. But we try to put in as much country and garage rock. We still do we do like the Kiss hard rock, AC/DC type thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe if the average person listens to it, it's just a bunch of noise. But yeah, if I could do nothing but country music, I would probably do that. I'm just really terrible at it. I'm not talented enough. I don't know enough people. But at the same time, I'd love to do like more like keyboard driven stuff, whether it's garage rock, whether it's like soul, whatever. I love keyboards. I think that yeah, and that's probably one of the. But yeah, so recently I've been like thinking I've always wanted to be in a band that has someone playing keyboards, and maybe not at the same time, but also a banjo. I really would love to play with someone that can play a banjo. Those are my bucket list things right now.
Musical dreams.
Yeah, I'd love to do like kind of again. I'd like to get into more like even. I'd love if I could actually figure out how to play, like to incorporate like some more funk or disco type stuff. I don't know. Again, you're kind of, if you're into punk rock, you're told to hate disco, and I really love disco now. I love disco music. I don't know why. I don't know how to dance. I'm not good at dancing. There's something about it that's just really appealing to me right now. And whether it's just straight up disco or disco integrated in with other types of music, I think it's really cool, kind of a hybrid mashup.
I had a band for 12 years called Abso-Funkin'-Lutely, and we played all kinds of disco, funk, R&B, you name it. Yeah, it's a ton of fun to play. So
I spent a lot of time in Austin, Texas when we're allowed to travel. And I mean, it's just a melting pot of music, but it's that's where you get to see all of that stuff, and people they're just so natural at it. It's just I'm just in awe of how they're able to execute that music, and they're just bar bands, playing in bars wherever you go. They're not going to be anything special in terms of making a name in the industry, but the talent is just it's unreal, and I can watch that stuff forever. I can just sit, I can spend hours in a bar doing that. And nothing against the bands here, but I think because that's not our home. That's not like that music is not home to here. It's not native to here, and so it's not that bands can't be good. It's just different as to when you grow up just completely immersed in music and that type of music.
It's not part of the culture. It's the same as ice hockey in UK or soccer here. It's just, you can get close to it and you can make a facsimile of it, but it's never quite it doesn't quite anchor properly, right? In a lot of cases. So, but with the country stuff, I was gonna ask you about that, because I mean, I've been listening to an awful lot of country lately, and a lot of that is down to you, because I know that you've been, and you and I talk about music on the side quite often. So I listen to Waylon Jennings and Chris Christopherson, and even going back to Hank Williams and some of those guys. It seems again a far cry from that punk rock kind of ethos, but there's a lot of similarities, I think, in that attitude and approach. And I think that I wanted to ask you about that. So the outlaw country stuff. Really, those were guys who were thumbing the nose at establishment and saying, no, we don't want to do that anymore. We want to do it our way. We want to write the songs. We want to perform the songs. We want to do our own production. We want a final say on that kind of stuff. So when you sort of latch onto punk or you latch onto country, those kinds of things, is it as much to do with that side of things, the authenticity of it and the sort of the genuine honesty of it, as much as it is the tonal sounds or the music itself?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's there's the whole country formula, even all the way back to the 60s, which is not my necessarily favorite. Just like, there's formulaic pop rock or dance music or whatever. And I mean, obviously there's lots of things culturally not cool about the South, but there was kind of that Southern thing of where they do want to do their own thing. And I think again that's really critical for art, when you're not trying to follow a formula and you're somewhat unpolished. I really appreciate that. You need to have some degree of technical talent to execute things. As much as I love Chris Christopherson, it's hard to listen to his music because like he's not on time and he's not in key, and it's even his phrasing is. I love that it's unique. It's not really. It's technically terrible. It is,
but it is really unusual. It is really unusual. I was listening to some of his stuff yesterday, and you have to adjust to it. You have to kind of put yourself into a different frame of mind to listen to that, to listen to some of the other guys, you know?
Yeah, so he's like borderline of like, he's almost not quite technically there, but he's just so good on the creative side and lyrically that you're able
as a songwriter,
to get past that. George Jones is another guy. If you read, you can read all the crazy stories about George Jones. Like he's a maniac. He's a complete maniac. And yet, if you talk to other country people, they will say he is the greatest country music talent of all time. And there's just, if he had gone to, school on how to write music or this or that, or even had proper management, I don't think there's any way you would have gotten that creativity and brilliance out of him. And I don't know. I just think that's a really important part of music is, I wouldn't say it's that you have to be crazy or insane, but you have to be wired differently to get that really cool stuff. And that's where you run into that kind of common thing of it is an issue, right? Whether it's addiction or mental health or this or that, it kind of runs through a lot of music. If you're wired as an accountant like me, you're probably not going to be that great of a musician. You're just not, because you're too you think too logically,
too structured. Yeah. But I think that's some of that too is where the pharmaceutical intervention was useful for a lot of guys. Where they'd be able to unlock that a little bit and sort of, okay, well, let's not worry about that too much. Hendrix. I remember listening to a podcast with Billy Gibbons. And he said that him and Hendrix used to sit around, and Hendrix used to say, like, he just needs to loosen up. I just need to loosen up. So they'd sit around in a hotel room listening to Jeff Beck and trying to figure out what the fuck he was doing with his guitar. And as the more they kind of mellowed out, well, then it was like, okay, now I'm loose enough, and now I can actually just go for it without being self-conscious, without worrying about it,
I think that's, when you mentioned the 60s there and, like, listening to Jeff Beck or whatever, again, stuff like that just blows my mind. It's so easy now. You get out your app or whatever and plug in the song, and it gives you the chords and this and that. And when you just read about these guys, like, well, I just put on the 45 and figured it out. I've maybe done that for like one song ever, and I am so proud of that. And I'm like, I don't know how these guys that's just what they did. So,
and with vinyl, you had to picking the fucking needle up and dropping it back 2 grooves and it's like, what was that again? Or slowing it down, and we all did that when we were kids, I think. To the horror of my dad, I would sit down and play 7 Seas of Rye or something like that. I'd sit down and I'd move the disc around with my finger just to see if I could pick out a little bit slower to see if I could pick out the notes. It's like, oh, what the fuck are you doing? You're gonna ruin the record player, So.
Absolutely. And so I think, and that's incredible, and that's where you get those. That really cool, innovative stuff, and it came about because there wasn't. We had, I guess whatever you want to talk about, even right now, it's isolation. But we have more time to do those things, and so again, back then there wasn't other things to take away your time, so you could spend 4 hours in an evening trying to figure out 7 Seas of Rye if you wanted, because there was nothing else to do.
Absolutely.
Kevin tells me you're into vinyl. Do you have a big vinyl collection?
But yeah, I started buying vinyl records again when I was 3 and 4 years old. I was picking out my own albums that I wanted, and I only took a break because everyone's like, oh, vinyl's got to come back. And so I think the last vinyl album I bought was in 1988, and then I started buying vinyl again in '93. So I took a 5-year break, but other than that, I've never stopped buying vinyl, and I never did stop listening. I always kept listening to it, even when I didn't buy it there for the 5 years. I always say nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and I think like I say, literally my earliest memories are of listening to records, and so that's probably why I just have never stopped. It gives you that instant comfort, and they talk about the ritual of it and the artwork, and yeah, sure, it's a real thing. And again, just to slow down and to, I find it harder and harder to do as I get older, but to actually do nothing and just listen to music is a tough thing to do. But when you can do that and just get your mind to relax, wow, like it's I can't think of anything comparable to that, and just getting lost in the music. I don't know. That's
I'm with you.
Do you think there's any? Do you think there's any comparison to a record store and a brewery, and like their meeting points of like-minded people, and it seems to me that there's got to be some similarities there.
Yeah, I think so. Again, because every record store sells records and every brewery sells beer, but there's always something special and unique, and it's the people, right? And
yeah.
And everyone has their little favorite and their unique one, or they have a special, their little secret spot that no one else knows about, So no, I think about that all the time as to why I'm into music and why I'm into beer, and that's where I love learning about the obscure, exotic bands and beers for that matter. And but at the same time, I want to turn other people onto it, which, whatever. I'm not trying to bash on anybody, but some people, they kind of always want to be. Well, once everyone else finds out about it, then it's not cool anymore. It's like, well, no, yeah. There was something special. Yeah,
that's bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah, there was something special. That's why you found out about it, and that's great. We should celebrate that it actually resonated with a bunch of other people. The mainstream doesn't always get it wrong.
But if you watch the Lemmy documentary, it talks about that, about when Motorhead sort of got their first record deal, and a whole bunch of the hardcore fans kind of walked out of the gig and sort of said, "Oh, you've sold out." And Lemmy says, "What do you think we're fucking doing this for? It's like, we want to get a deal, we want to make music. So there's no such thing as selling out." So, Mark, with the Rebellion tap room, and obviously, it's as much a music establishment almost as it is a brewery. Like you said, you walk in there and you hear the backroom staff listen to the Kinks. Out front, the music selection is a part of what makes the atmosphere in that room. And you have live artists on there and you have record nights. What I was thinking about was there's a big intersect that I see between music and brewing. And maybe it's even between art and brewing. So, a lot of brewers are musicians, they're photographers, they paint, they're really creative people. So how do you see that link between, we haven't talked too much about the brewery at all yet, but between the brewery and the arts and the music, and how does that mesh? How do you see that meshing?
Yeah, it definitely intersects. I haven't really thought of it in that way necessarily, but yeah, the one way I have, what's really been interesting is that all the people that we've hired always end up having great taste in music, and it may not be the same as mine, or they might even be into hip hop, but they're listening to like really cool, unique stuff, or they're actually writing their own hip hop music on the side, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
No one has like come in and be like, "Hey, I want to put the top 40 radio station on."
Well, I don't think that would fly with Jen anyway, would it?
No, I haven't said it to our current staff in a while, but I remember when we first started, I said, anyone can play any music they want, as long as it's not top 40. And I said, and I always reserve the right to make fun of you for whatever you. Why I love brewing so much is that there's so much science, and but there's also just as much art. I could go off on that for a long, long time. As we grow and we bring on different people, or I see other bigger breweries, the roles start to get a little split, and you can get into different personalities, which is fine. I've seen other breweries where they'll say, "Oh, this guy's amazing. He went to school in Germany, and he's this professional trained brewer." It's like, okay, but his beers suck because he has no artistic creativity. He doesn't actually. He knows how to turn the levers and measure the temperatures and hit all of his numbers, but the beer has no soul, right?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Well, it's like those prodigy piano players, right? You see these 5-6-year-old players playing Chopin and Beethoven. They don't give a shit about what they're playing, and it comes across, right? And it's the same thing. You can be technically superb, but if you don't feel it, no one believes it.
I've always appreciated technical talent in musicians, even though I have none. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but can you actually write it into a song? Can you get up on stage and actually captivate an audience for half an hour or an hour? Or are you just, showing off how many notes you can play, right? So yeah, maybe that's part of that connection with brewing, is that you still,
Yeah.
you have to be able to execute. You can't, be completely sloppy.
I think that kind of comes back to authenticity, like we were talking earlier. And I was just going to ask you, because Kev tells me you're a fan of Kiss, but do you think there was any point where Kiss became more about a brand than being an actual band performing and crafting original songs? Or it seems to me, they're so good at marketing that it's kind of like, well, what the fuck you guys doing, really?
100%. So I mean, I love Kiss, and but I make they were even like I appreciate different parts of Kiss, but they were, I mean, they peaked within their first like 3 or 4 years of existence, and then they just became a marketing machine and got kind of lazy and lame. Yeah, no, for sure. Like you mentioned, Rod Stewart. Yeah, I mean, he peaked in 1975. Like, and I mean, he's made a lot more money since then. But in terms of what I'm interested in and the stuff that I really, and and sure, everyone has whether you call it your guilty pleasure or this or that, but no, there's there's always people. Oh wow, such and such a song or such and such an album. That was actually really good. Yeah, sure, fine, but like it was. And I don't hate Rod Stewart, but like it's over and done. Like that pure artist point was done by 1975 when he moved to Los Angeles. I mean, he didn't move to Los Angeles for an artistic renaissance. He moved there for tax purposes and to exploit the North American market with fucking disco rock. Like, there's nothing so don't try to defend his 80s garbage as well. Such and such an album was pretty good. Sure, fine, but like I don't care. I just don't care. A band like Kiss, they figured it out and they're genius. And I wouldn't say that. Again, I don't think people sometimes lose the subtlety of when I say I'm influenced by them as marketers, in that you can be. A lot of it I don't care for, but I understand what they were doing and how they did it. And I mean, even when they were, I think, relevant as artists, again, it was the idea of we're going to do anything and we're going to do it bigger and badder, and we're going to yell at everyone and we're going to tell the whole world about it. We're going to say, hey, if you don't come to our show, you're missing out on the greatest thing in the world. And so we do that even with our brewery, and that's why we tell people you can only get in Saskatchewan. Sorry. Like I say, I was on a Zoom call with the federal finance minister, and before the call, there's like this awkward silence where there's 40 people and no one knows each other and no one wants to say anything. And so people just started talking to her and saying, oh, Rebellion Brewing, they make the best beer around and blah, 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 blah. And she's like, oh, where can I get it? And I said, and so then I jumped in and I said, well, you have to come to Saskatchewan because that's where as you know, that's where all the good things are, all the best things in Canada are. And everyone laughs, whatever, right? But that's from Kiss, right? Kiss says, we're the hottest band in the world, and they're just like, we're the hottest band in the world.
I saw them. I don't know exactly how many years ago it would be now, but it was one of their farewell tours where they had all the original members, and I'll tell you, man, they excel at spectacle. And you can't forget too, they also wrote some really good, they were like good pop songs, good singable songs. Like, I want to rock and roll all night. I mean, who doesn't like that and know it, right?
Yeah, they were fine at that stuff. Again, if you dig into it, there is some cool obscure stuff. It was, I mean, they don't promote it or push it, but yeah, they were cool, and they were just trying to, they tried out everything just to see what would grab people's attention. And once they kind of got in on that formula, then they rode that and did really well.
Where do you find new music? Where do you get that from? Do you get that from your buddies, or how do you go about that?
I would say a lot of my staff members, because again, they're playing lots of cool stuff. A lot of them playing their own bands, so they turn me on to a lot of stuff. And I'm really stoked about Spotify. So I've been on Spotify for I think a couple years now, 2 years now, maybe 3 years, probably 3 years at least. I don't know. I lose track of time. But I remember in 2001, like I say, I was always buying records, always buying music. And in 2001, I was like, man, I'm just blowing money on all these new albums, and most of them are terrible. And then, that was kind of around when Napster came out, and everyone's like, all these everyone puts out all these albums. There's one good song, the rest are terrible. They're ripping us off. I never really. I stayed away from Napster. But yeah, I was like, I'm just wasting my money on all this junk. And sure, there was some great new music, but a ton of it just was awful. And so in 2001, I just stopped buying new music, and I wasn't consuming it in any fashion whatsoever. I completely dived into like the 60s and learning about the Yardbirds and the Pretty Things and the Kinks and all this stuff. It just blew my brains out on that. I just love that. And I like these are classic, amazing bands. Why wouldn't I buy a Yardbirds album versus, you know, whatever new flavor of the week crap is? So up until the you know, 3 or 4 years ago, I literally didn't listen to new music for 15 years. And looking back, I was saying about that, I'm glad that I really took the time to explore 60s and 70s music. And but at the same time, I missed out on so much other great music. And so, yeah, I mean, good or bad, Spotify has been a great way of just exposing me to tons and tons of new music. Even still, I'm still discovering obscure 60s, 70s stuff. Tonight I was listening to a bunch of Bobby Darin albums from the late 60s, early 70s. Mm-hmm. So again, you know, Bobby Darin was, you know, teen idol kind of nonsense. And then he got a conscience and started doing this like really cool folk country stuff. And I had no idea. I had no idea other than through Spotify. And I was like, man, this is fantastic. So I don't know. That's kind of cool.
Obviously, I said, I like watching your Facebook feed, and you have conversations with a lot of your friends do focus around music. So I like to pick off bands that you talk about and, you know, cue them up and listen to them. And we generally have a fairly small overlap, I would say, in our musical taste. I love the Beatles and Foo Fighters and Genesis. But around 50% of the time, I do find, you know, a band that I kind of throw on and listen to. I think, holy shit, these guys are amazing. And I also think, I can't believe Heise listens to these guys. So I remember Southern Culture on the Skids was one of the first ones. Natural Child, Wire, Super Suckers, even Waylon Jennings you put me onto. So having that kind of person who can influence you musically, I think, is one of the things that the internet's done a brilliant job of, certainly for me. And we also, you and I share a love of, as well as the Kinks, Steve Earle. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. Sure. What turned you on to, when did you discover Steve Earle, and what was your journey into listening to his music?
Yeah, I mean, it's unreal. And, you know, you think, again, I keep going back to those albums over and over again, and there's so many of them, and like it's and like I say, I've seen him live now probably at least 4 or 5 times, maybe more. And what strikes me is that he's not an entertainer. He's not at all. He still looks very awkward and jittery up there.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't really want to be there, but it's like, well, I know that this is how I make my money, and I know that people really like what I do, so I'm going to do it. But you can tell he'd rather really be somewhere else. Not that he hates his fans. You can tell he's just not comfortable. But he's done it so long that it's unbelievable when he actually just starts playing the songs, how talented he is and how it just flows through him. I don't know. It's really cool. I got to see him play in a record store. He did an acoustic show in Texas.
Oh man.
And I mean, I was standing, I don't know, 6 feet away from him, right? Like, and that was pretty awesome. That was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Observe that, right? And you could just, I don't know. I don't like to use the word like magic, but you could just, I don't know. Sometimes you can just almost see that aura around people, but yet there's no air about him at all. He's just a guy, you know. I remember when he finished, he was like, "Well, I guess I better hang around. Some of you guys probably want me to sign some shit or something." Like, okay, fine, I'll hang around. Like that was how he ended the show, you know.
Yeah.
And then he just walked over to a corner and like just sat on a chair. And so this people was like, "Oh, I guess I'll go take my record and get it signed." You know. So,
yeah.
I saw him in Regina in Saskatoon when he did Copperhead Road, the whole album start to finish in order, and so they're playing the opening song, and everybody has their cell phone up, and he goes on the mic, says, "Put your fucking cell phones away." I thought that was great. Everybody just it was terrific though.
Yeah, no, there's special people like that come along. I've seen people say like he's kind of the modern Bob Dylan. I would agree with that. It's just you know, he doesn't register on most people's things, you know, and I don't know. And again, not that I'm not, I wouldn't say that young people are stupid or anything, but it's hard to, that's where I struggle these days. How do you get a young person to get interested in Steve Earle? Because he's not flashy or exciting
Yeah.
necessarily. He looks like, a homeless wizard or I don't know. Right?
Yeah. But again, part of the attraction though is I think, and part of my attraction to his music and to him as a person, as a speaker, as a thinker, is again, it's that honesty. And he's lived it. This isn't just he's not just making a buck writing some 2-bit shitty rhyme. He really believes this. And I think that there's a parallel there, whether you, I don't know how much you recognize this, but obviously, especially during the pandemic, and then, and even before that, you've grown into this figure within the Regina, business community, and certainly within the Saskatchewan craft beer community, where you really have a very strong voice. And part of that is because people know that when you say something, you mean it and you believe it. And I think that you can hang your hat on authenticity and honesty. And I think that's what attracts people to those kinds of influences, right? So, coming from, an accountancy background and being a bit of an introvert, how do you wear that sort of responsibility of being a really strong voice now for a whole shit ton of people in a whole different ways?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's flattering to hear that. But yeah, I would say I don't feel like I've really changed my thoughts. I try to always be really thoughtful, and I probably think way too much. I don't know, man. I'd probably be diagnosed as something. I don't know, but that's fine. Everyone has some degree of mental health. It's how acceptable to the rest of the world is kind of how I view it. But yeah, I think about those things, and no, I try to. It absolutely has to be genuine. It has to be something I believe in. And then again, I don't feel like it's crass, but I try to think about, okay, how do I express what I'm feeling in a way that's going to resonate with other people? Because sometimes you just want to rage and be like, fuck, I fucking hate everybody, or this guy's an asshole, and that's fine, and that's that like natural instinct to just yell and swear and scream. But it's much more powerful if you could figure out how to be a little more eloquent and communicate that on a broader basis that people can relate to, right? I mean, and I think, right, you look for those universal truths and things that resonate universally, and it's incredibly powerful. And I certainly don't feel that I'm good at it. I feel that I'm aware of it and trying to do it, if that makes sense.
For sure, yeah. I mean, like I said, even if it's not a conscious thing, they're drawn to it, right? Because again, people believe you, and that's really important. And so, especially at this time, I remember the early days when the pandemic broke and you had to close the tap room and everything was very uncertain. I know that was an emotional, difficult time for you.
Yep.
Yet you kept not just looking after Rebellion and looking after your staff and looking after yourself, but still being a vocal presence for the warehouse district and for the provincial craft beer scene. What drives you to keep stepping up and being that type of leader? Like, when you really could just focus on keeping your own house in order, where do you think that drive comes from? Is it that Presbyterian work ethic? Is it your folks? Where does that come from, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, my parents have a few times said, they're like, I mean, they make the comment jokingly, they're like, we don't even know where this guy came from. We're like, we don't get it. And I mean, and yeah, of course, there's tons. I mean, I get tons of things from my parents, but they were never. Neither of them have been very loud or outspoken by any stretch. Yeah, I think it's a lot of. Well, maybe, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a direct thing. But when you mentioned like Steve Earle, Steve Earle's very in tune with the rest of the world. And it's not all about like, I need to talk about who's suffering more than me, but it's just being aware that there's more going on than just yourself and your own immediate frustration or your own immediate needs. So whether that's homeless people or just other fellow businesses that are probably suffering right now, or even when I've really made a conscious effort to not say anything negative since this all started. And I try to not be negative most of the time, but I like to be sure, everyone likes to be negative. It's easy to be critical and criticize things, and it's fun. I love criticizing things. I consider that like an art form in itself. But I just really decided, I was like, okay, this is a bad thing. This is a bad thing that is happening to the world and to my community. And I know that people are going to be stressed out, and people are going to be bitching and complaining and scared and all sorts of things. And I was like, I don't want to contribute to that. I don't want to, even if I am really mad about something that's going on right now, I don't want to voice that publicly, because it's just going to create more negativity, and that's not needed right now. I can voice that privately, or just deal with it on my own. And so that's where I say I do think about those things deliberately. And it's been cool. It's been, I don't know. I'm not looking for accolades or feel like, I deserve a medal or an award, but it's been cool to see that my approach seems to be appreciated and welcomed, right? And again, I don't know. I tell people, we make beer. We're not curing cancer, and I can't save the world, but I can try to make the world a little less shitty if I can make the world a little less shitty for one other person, then it's worth it. And so, I post stupid selfie pictures, and in the past, some people are like, well, Mark's just full of himself and just, wants to stare at pictures of him. And it's like, and again, on the surface, sure, it can look like that and be like, oh, Mark's just, look at me. But it's like, no, just look at me being a jackass, and it's okay. It's okay, right? And just whether if that gives people half a second of humor or whatever, it just to not have to think about whatever other crap is going on right now. I'm like, cool. So
I think it's that thing of, sorry, Randy.
Nothing wrong with, I was just going to say, there's nothing wrong with bringing a little bit of levity to situations. We don't always have to take ourselves so seriously all the time. So,
Yeah. So again,
go ahead.
If I put my marketing hat on, like that's where, so when I say we don't want to be negative, like we try not to talk about the pandemic or we're all in this together, or we need to flatten the curve. We specifically were like, we're not going to use those words at all. And then it was hilarious because I was on a Zoom call last week with a bunch of businesses, and it was a kind of a social media do's and don'ts. And of course, the lady running it was like, don't do any of this. And it was funny because a month ago, I had emailed all these businesses. I'm like, don't use any of this stupid terminology. Don't be an idiot. And they all did it. So then it was kind of funny to hear this woman it's her profession. She's like, yeah, you don't do that.
We're almost at the end here. And so, thanks for hanging around here. But so I kind of like to ask this question to fellow musicians, in the days of MacBook Pros and recording hit albums in your bedroom and guitar sales, not what they used to be. It's a silly question, but do you think, is rock dead? Is punk dead? Or will it always live?
I think there'll always be that burning thing. It's just going to change. When I think about that kind of genuine creativity and whatnot, and just being yourself, like I say, I love punk rock. I've never once said I'm a punk. I just don't believe in that. But when I say I like punk rock, I also love country music because I see the same thing. And I've tried really, really hard to wrap my head around hip hop. I've really, really tried. I don't dislike it by any stretch. I don't know. And I bet I'm actually really looking forward to maybe 10 years from now, I'm going to be like, oh, I finally get hip hop. And then I'm going to listen to I'll have 40 years of hip hop to listen to and enjoy.
Yeah.
But I haven't been able to wrap my head around it as to, it hasn't resonated with me yet, but sounds great. I'm looking forward to that. I have something to look forward to. And so to me, that's where it comes from. And if people aren't playing guitars, that's fine. That's just a tool. As much as I love guitar-based music, and I think there'll always be a place for it. But like I say, even if it's Steve Earle or whoever, like it's, I think we get caught up in our bubble. I think, like, again, when you look at the rest of the world, they view that music as really old. And it's not, and it's still really vital and energetic, but the bulk of the world views guitar-based music as just, it's old, it's stale, it's out of touch. Yeah. It really is. And I've really come to terms with that over the last few years. And I think that's okay. And honestly, again, maybe it's the same thing as how I said I hated ABBA in the 80s and the 90s, and in the last year, all of a sudden I love ABBA. Maybe absence makes the heart grow fonder, and so maybe it's okay if guitar music isn't. And well, honestly, guitar music hasn't been a big thing, really.
No, not for 20 years.
Yeah. And so maybe there'll be another renaissance again, which is cool. But no, there's always, again, to me, it's more about the energy and the sentiment than the tools used. That's how I view it.
Yeah, good point.
Completely agree. Okay, so we're going to finish. We always finish our episodes here with 10 quick-fire questions. The answers don't need to be quick-fire, but they're just short, sort of encapsulated. So number one, and I think I know exactly where this is going to be. Stones or Beatles?
Well, Stones. Hate the Beatles.
What is the favorite thing in your closet right now?
I'll give you a different answer because I can say it because this won't come out right away. I have an entire pink camouflage outfit that I want to wear sometime this week, and I was looking at it. I was admiring it earlier today.
Amazing. Okay, number three. What song do you wish you'd written?
Oh man, this is where I go blank. I listen to so much cool stuff. I'll just pick the one that stood out to me last night. I was listening to it's a Billy Joe Shaver song. It's Slow Rollin' Low that Waylon Jennings did. I don't know. It just stood out to me last night. I'm like, that's a great song. I should learn that song.
Okay, then as a counterpoint to that, what song do you wish you hadn't written?
Me? Probably all of them. Every song I've ever written is pretty terrible. I don't know. I still create. There's not very many songs I've written where I would feel comfortable if I was at a big event and they played it.
Oh yeah.
I would. There's not a single. Yeah, there's not a single song I've wrote that I would feel comfortable hearing in a crowd. Yeah. I don't mind doing them. I don't mind performing live because I don't care. But if it was a recorded song, I'd run and hide. Yeah.
Alrighty. Sandals or flip-flops?
Neither. No. No. So when we had the Radfords, we had a rule. There was no sandals or flip-flops allowed. We had a singer at one point, and he brought them. We went and played a show in Melfort, and we fired him when we got home because he wore his sandals. We're like, no, that's the rules, and we had the rules. We were actually. This is in the 90s, and we had our band rules posted on our website, and we're like, dude, you just broke the band rules. You have to be kicked out of the band. And so I became the singer after that, and I sang in every band since. So.
Really? So that's what spurred it?
Yeah. So no sandals or flip flops, neither. No, no one wants to see men's feet.
So you kind of like Phil Collins then. You were thrust to the front.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the best piece of advice you've received from a musician?
Yeah, so I mentioned that punk rock zine, and it was the band. The band was called the Black Halos. The lead singer was Billy Hopeless, and I'm actually friends with him on Facebook now, and he's pretty awesome. But he was the guy who said, if you don't think your band is the best band in the world, you need to quit your band. And if you don't think your songs are the best songs in the world, you need to write new songs. And I remember reading that over 20 years ago, and I still think about that once a week. So probably him. Yeah.
The sentiment is excellent. Okay, this one's another big question for a guy such as yourself. What's your favorite beer right now?
Well, I'm drinking Zilla IPA from Rebellion. It tastes pretty good right now. Yeah. It changes lots.
Yeah, absolutely. Who is the best artist or band you've seen live?
I would say the Lazy Cowgirls, which was a cowpunk band from Los Angeles. And I saw them in Calgary when I was living in Calgary. And so I would consider myself young at the time. How old was I? 23 years old when I saw them. I can't even think of numbers anymore. I'd lose track. I was 23 years old, and they were already probably in their late 40s, 50s. They were like balding, and they weren't fat. They weren't fat. They were rock and roll guys, but they were like balding, and like some of them had like ponytails, like cheesy 80s stuff, and they just slayed. They're just like, and I remember sitting there with she became my wife. I'm like, these guys are way more badass and way more punk rock than any other band I've ever seen, and they just got up and just destroyed the place. And it was it was so inspiring. I was like, man, these guys are pushing 50 years old. How do they've got more energy and more balls and more talent than anything I've ever seen. And it's just always stood out to me. Love that band.
So where was that? Cool. What venue was that in Calgary?
That was at the Night Gallery, which is no longer around, but it's kind of a classic venue. It was on a second floor club on First Street, which was really fun. There was another pub a few doors down called the Castle Pub. That's where I first was drinking craft beer, drinking Wild Rose, and my band played there. And it was awesome. It was a cool place to hang out back then.
Okay, we've got 2 left for you. Okay, describe your teenage self in 3 words.
Probably like an arrogant asshole. I don't know, is that 2 or 3 words?
That's 2.
That's 2. 1 more.
I don't know. I mean, I was very, very introverted. I was extremely introverted. I've ran into some people who maybe I played hockey with back then, and they haven't seen me since then, and they're like, "Who the hell are you? Like you never said anything back then, and you were so quiet." They're like, "You fought. You like to fight in hockey, but you didn't say anything." And so, yeah. Anyways.
Okay, last question then. Who would you most like to perform with, given the opportunity? Anyone living or dead?
Perform with, like play a show with, like on stage together, or open for, or
on stage together. 1 song, the whole show, whatever you want to do.
Probably nobody, because like I say, I'm not good enough to. I don't feel comfortable. I have a huge inferiority complex. I feel like I'm not. I feel like I'm like a fraud. You know, I'm not really part of the club. I wouldn't want to be. Yeah, I'd be embarrassed to be on the stage with anyone.
You know what's amazing? That pretty much everyone we've spoken to so far has said pretty much exactly the same thing to some degree. Right. Everyone's got the same sort of hang up about they wouldn't want to play with their hero because they'd look like an idiot. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of a funny quirk that musicians have, I think.
Yeah, I don't feel like I feel comfortable like around brewers and whatnot, but with musicians, I don't feel like I'm a peer to them. I just don't.
Yeah.
I still, and like I say, maybe that goes back to what I was originally saying. Like because I didn't grow up around, like I say, I didn't have an uncle who was like a cool guitar player or anything. And so they just seemed like these mythical people. And so even to this day, like I won't go and get autographs from musicians. I won't go up and talk to them. I feel so out of place. And I regret a lot of that, because there's a lot of really awesome musicians, or I've gotten to, it's always a little bit easier online, but in person, I really struggle. And I hate that whole fanboy of, oh my God, I want your autograph. Like, that's just dumb shit. They don't want to hear that.
Agreed.
But I have, in the last few years though, with like the Super Suckers and a few of the other bands, I've at least had the courage to like open up a conversation with them and just talk to them. Not say, oh my God, I love this or that. It's just like, hey, let's go get some good food or whatever. Like, let's just talk about anything. We're talking about movies with the Super Suckers or this or that. Like, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And anyways, I'm still coming out of my shell. I'm in my 40s and still growing and learning.
It's a lifelong pursuit.
And a lot of people who sort of know you from Rebellion and from the CTV and Global and the appearances, I think they'll find that interesting that you are introverted and that you have that side. So I don't think many people maybe appreciate that. So
yeah, on the beer side, I don't care. I'm not intimidated by anybody on the beer side. And it's not. And again, I don't think I really don't feel like it comes out of arrogance. It does come out of I know I've brewed some really good beer, and I don't know. And not every batch is the best, but I'll put it up against anything. And so I do feel like a peer to a lot of those folks. I feel very comfortable. Music, no, I don't. It's terrifying.
Thanks for listening, music lovers. We'll include links in the episode notes to some of Mark's music as well as some of the songs and bands we talked about today. We'll also include links for the Rebellion Brewing webpage and their social media, as well as the Rebellion Brewing podcast, which you should all check out. We'll let Mark have the last word. Take it away, Mark.